If you're planning a visit to Lisbon, there are a number of mistakes you should avoid. And today we're going to talk about those common mistakes made by those visiting Portugal's capital. Hola, tudo bem? Hello, I'm Tony Galvez from Road Trip Spain and Portugal, where we help you plan the perfect trip with practical information and insider tips. In no particular order, these are the mistakes you should avoid. Not spending enough time in Lisbon is one of the most common mistakes. How many people plan to visit Lisbon and spend 2 to 3 days in the city? Lisbon is full of attractions and wonderful places to visit, and 3 days won't even scratch the surface. Not to mention if you want to do a couple of day trips like Sintra. If you don't want to leave Lisbon regretting not having had time for more, plan to spend 5 to 7 days in the city. That's for a first contact with Lisbon, and we are sure you won't regret it. There is nothing like a leisurely visit to a beautiful city where you can enjoy every moment you spend in it. No matter what you may have read or seen in texts or videos published many years ago, Lisbon is no longer that mega cheap European destination. Granted, for someone from Norway, the price of a beer in Lisbon must be laughable, but Lisbon's tourist success has brought with it a considerable increase in prices. If you compare, for example, the cost of eating in Lisbon with that of Madrid or Barcelona, the Portuguese capital loses out. A decade ago, eating in Lisbon was a bargain. Public transport paying with the ticket most visitors will use, for another example, is more expensive in Lisbon than in Madrid or Barcelona. There are still bicas, espresso coffees to be had for less than €1, but in general, keep in mind that prices have gone up in the city. And we are not even going to talk about the gigantic problem of housing costs, because that's a bit out of the focus of this channel. If you want to see tourist prices, there are several chain shops in Lisbon, beautiful ones by the way, selling everything from cheese-filled cod cakes to canned fish at outrageous prices. Don't think for a minute that this is a traditional type of store where Lisboners shop. These shops, with their wonderful window displays, are designed to catch the eye of you, the tourist. There are great places to try codfish cakes and more traditional shops to buy tinned fish without getting ripped off. Getting around Portugal by car can be a wonderful journey, but what is absolutely certain is that getting around Lisbon by car is a lousy idea. Traffic is hell and parking is difficult. With good quality public transport, there is no reason to drive in Lisbon. If you hire a car to get around Lisbon, you will be wasting your time and money. 2 mistakes related to the magnificent Elevador de Santa Justa. The first is paying for a single ticket. Right now, a return ticket costs €5.30. For €6.60, you get an unlimited transport pass for Lisbon, valid for 24 hours, which allows you to travel on the Santa Justa Elevador, funiculars, trams and buses as many times as you want. The second mistake is wasting valuable time in the queue to get into the Santa Justa lift. And when we talk about valuable time, we're talking about queues of more than 1 hour. The interesting thing is that the long queues form at the base of the lift to go up in the Baixa to Chiado direction. But if you want to go down in the Chiado to Baixa direction, cross the iron structure that connects Chiado with the lift, and if you are in Lisbon on a date when there are not many tourists in the city, you will find little or no queue to go down. The Elétrico 28, Lisbon's tram line 28, is a favorite with tourists. That's why getting on it on the route through the center is quite a feat, as it's almost always jam-packed. Our suggestion is to try to get on the 28 at the first stop at Praça Martim Moniz. There can be a daunting queue here too, but you will eventually get on the tram. And at times when there are fewer tourists in Lisbon, you may even be able to sit down. If you wait for the tram in the center, you may end up throwing in the towel after 10 full trams pass by. And still on the tram, it can happen that the same tram line may be doing a shorter route. That is why it is always good to check the name written on the front of the tram. For example, the complete route of tram 28 goes all the way to Prazeres, but sometimes you may see a 28 tram with destination Estrela, which does not go to the end of the line. This is the same route, only the tram will turn around before reaching the end. One more transport tip. Lisbon's metro is a gigantic work of art, and it would be a shame not to take the time to visit at least some of its stations. No two are alike. Among our favorites, Parque on the blue line or Olaias on the red line. Not forgetting the entrance to Picoa station on the yellow line, which will transport you to Paris in a metaphorical way, that is. If you can avoid airport taxis, we feel sorry for the honest professionals, of which there are some, but there are so many stories of improper charges and unjustified journeys around Lisbon that if you choose to get in a taxi, you should know that you are liable to be cheated in some way. Want to leave the airport in a private car? Ask for a Bolt or an Uber, as we explained in the video about leaving the airport. This advice is also shared with Spain's major cities. Lisbon, although a very safe city, has its army of pickpockets. They operate wherever there are tourists, so be very careful in crowded places, in queues at attractions, in restaurants and on public transport, especially on trams frequented by tourists. The basic advice is always carry your ID, money and mobile phone out of reach of thieves, preferably in an inside pocket and always close to your body. Also, if possible, avoid taking public transport with large suitcases. Let's move on to food. One mistake would be not to be familiar with the usual meal times in Portugal, which are always earlier than in Spain. Outside of very touristy locations, where there may be more extensive or adapted timetables, the usual time for lunch is between midday and 2 p.m. and dinner between 7:30 and 9:30 in the evening. As soon as you sit down at the table, you will most likely be served a couvert. In Portugal, this couvert can take many different forms. It will almost always have a basket of bread, sometimes olives, sometimes cheese. It would be a mistake to think, as many tourists do, that this couvert is a courtesy of the house. It is not free and has to be paid for. The more ingredients it contains, the more expensive it is. The value is usually listed on the menu. If you don't want the couvert, tell the waiter on the spot to take it away or leave it in a corner and don't touch it. If you don't touch it, you won't be charged for it. The couvert is not usually expensive and we almost always accept the bread, which is usually very good in Portugal. You may not like fish very much, but it would be a crime to visit Lisbon and not dive headlong into the countless cod recipes you will find. It would also be a mistake to think of cod, of bacalhau, as just another recipe. It is a food that occupies a central place in Portuguese life and culture. And a good place to understand the origin of this connection between Portugal and cod is the Centro Interpretativo da História do Bacalhau, which we talked about in our Lisbon attractions video. And then we move on to dessert. It would also be a mistake to think that all traditional pastéis de nata, the famous Portuguese egg tarts, are the same. Try this delicacy in different places and see which is more to your taste. We really like the pastries from Manteigaria, and the original ones from Pastéis de Belém are also great. But there are also really atrocious pastéis de nata. I know this advice is going to be controversial because it's hard to find a video on Lisbon that doesn't say you should eat at time out market. But you should know by now that we're not very prone to be swayed by other people's opinions. We like to have our own opinion. And you see, Lisbon's time out market, like Madrid's Mercado de San Miguel, is a place for tourists with tourist prices. There are countless better places to eat in the city. But if you like shows for tourists, go ahead. In the video with our favorite Lisbon attractions, we dedicated a section to the wonderful Portuguese irregular pavement. And I'm sure you've already realized that this pavement is not good for walking in high heels. That's right, walking in high heels in Lisbon can be a torment, so be careful with your footwear. Likewise, dragging suitcases can ruin the wheels of your suitcase, so try to avoid that. Two mistakes related to one of Lisbon's most visited attractions, which always attracts crowds, the Castelo de San Jorge, St. George's Castle. If you arrive without a ticket, you can lose a lot of time in the queue. If you don't want to buy a ticket in advance, try to get in early in the morning when the queues have not yet formed. Still on the topic of the castle, as you will quickly realize, the castle is in an elevated position above the center. It is possible to walk up, but it is unnecessary and tiring. You will walk a lot in Lisbon, you can be sure of that. You could take bus 737, which will drop you next to the castle walls. The bus departs from Praça da Figueira in Rossio. Or, leaving from Rua dos Banqueiros in Baixa, take advantage of a free public lift system that takes you up two very steep slopes. Take one lift first, exit to the left, walk 2 minutes and take the second. Exit the second lift, turn right and walk less than 10 minutes to the castle. Your legs will thank you for the help provided by the lifts. Still on the subject of tickets, attraction passes are not always a guarantee of good savings, but in the case of the Lisboa card, we think it can be a good investment, and it certainly was for us. We tested and talked about the attractions pass in a video on the channel. If you are looking to save money on entrance fees and transportation, the Lisboa card can be a good option. And we always send our videos with the same thing. Do you have questions? Do you need guidance? Use the commentary box to ask. We are always delighted to help. We have already published several videos on the channel dedicated to Lisbon. We talked about how to get out of the airport, published a comprehensive guide to public transport in the city, analyzed the best neighborhoods for you to stay, presented our top 20 favorite attractions in Lisbon, tested the Lisbon card, and we talked about what and where to eat in Lisbon. Once a month, the list of videos gets another new video about Portugal, so don't miss them. We leave you with one more video that will be very useful for your next trip to Portugal. We are waiting for you in that video.